Yeah, so welcome everybody. Nice to see you again, Lou. Nice to meet
Yeah.
you, Sergio and Barbara. Yeah, so these kind of chats in the afternoon are kind of just open hours of discussion, where we can kind of chat about some things that interest us or confuse us or interest us and confuse us sometimes. Whatever. And just kind of see where things go. It's kind of unstructured kind of program offering that the center offers. Be nice to just hear where everybody's kind of tuning in from. And maybe if you like short introduction, like kind of what brings you here this afternoon. If you have any background in the teachings or practice of Buddhism or meditation or whatever similar things.
I'll start. I started meditating a very long time ago, probably early 20s, I guess maybe 25 years ago. But then, I don't know, I guess I let life kind of take over, let it go, and back into it. And just starting with Buddhism philosophy actually as well.
Cool. Have you done any courses or just kind of checking out books? Or?
Kind of both. The course is here, and a lot of the books that seem to speak about mindfulness are basically Buddhist philosophy. And it kind of trails into other things after you start reading one, it kind of leads to another.
Yeah. And are you in Santa Fe?
No, I'm in Toronto, Canada.
Oh, you're in Toronto. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So in that Lama Yeshe Ling, that's the center, and there's an FPMT center in Toronto. Is that Lama Yeshe Ling? You're not sure?
Don't know. No.
Yeah, thanks. Barbara?
Yeah, hi. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I am learning and I'm interested in Buddhism, but more specifically Buddhist psychology. I have some education in psychology, and back in like 1981, I saw a sign for transcendental meditation, and I said, well, this sounds cool, let me go and see what this is. So I went and did that, and had no idea what meditation was, and have had an interest in that over the years. But I like the meditation that I'm learning through the center now. I feel it feels better to me. So my introduction to Buddhism came through writers like Thich Nhat Hanh and Pema Chodron. And so I really wasn't aware of the different factions of, the different branches of Buddhism. So I just kind of fell into this online because it was in Santa Fe, not too far from me, and really didn't understand what Tibetan Buddhism was versus, Zen Buddhism or anything like that. So I'm very pleased so far, and I'm really enjoying learning all kinds of things. Right now I just started reading the book Destructive Emotions by the Dalai Lama. And so I love when somebody recommends good books and other things for me to do outside of these meetings. But I try to pop into as many of these as I possibly can. So I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on things.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, great.
And I'm from South Florida right now, and I've been a Buddhist for 11 months. So I just enjoy it. Don't know what to tell you.
Coming up on the anniversary.
Yeah, coming up.
Cool. And did Venerable Robina come through the center in person Did that happen?
Yes, in
Yeah.
Deerfield Beach, you came
Oh, great.
to the Deerfield Beach Center. I attended about 8 days of classes, and
Mm.
I actually took refuge in person instead of taking it on Zoom,
Oh,
which
nice.
was a big difference. So
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Right on. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I guess I'm calling in from I'm in San Diego. And I did my Buddhist education started in Boulder at Naropa University. This is kind of a Buddhist inspired liberal arts college in Boulder. It's founded by a Tibetan master in the 70s. Tibetan master and some beatniks like Allen Ginsberg and those guys. And then I did, there's another school in Portland, Oregon called Maitripa College that's connected with this organization. That's a Buddhist grad school. So they have advanced Buddhist studies, a master's program, and they also have a divinity track that trains Buddhist chaplains. Just kind of I think there's only maybe 3 or 4 Buddhist chaplain programs, training programs in the country. So that's kind of neat. And right now I'm getting a master's degree in mindfulness-based counseling. So I kind of also have an affinity and connection with Western psychology. And I've always kind of been weaving between the two, between Buddhist psychology and Western psychology. The models are different and they kind of can be helpful in different ways. Yeah. I guess I could say, just kind of riff off this topic of, this becoming your own therapist was an idea from the founder of FPMT, Lama Yeshe, who founded an organization with Lama Zopa Rinpoche back in the 60s and 70s. And it's interesting kind of statement, becoming your own therapist. And it's funny for me training to become a therapist, like a professional therapist, through doing this course so often. But I think one of my professors actually in my current program at Naropa, this counseling program, she's a longtime Buddhist and she's been a therapist for a long time. And she said to us one time, like, pretty much my job at this point is just helping clients accept themselves. So that's all I'm pretty much doing as a therapist, just knowing them to accept themselves, or to help them, support them in accepting themselves. And finally, it's kind of a core component of the Buddhist system of meditation or approach to meditation and Buddhist psychology. In the sense that we're kind of waking up to the content of our lives and the content of ourselves, and learning how to witness or be present to what's arising with the sense of awareness and not just kind of blind reactivity. And in that way, we start to kind of gain sovereignty over our mind and our experience. Yeah. So meditation is maybe different in the sense of the transcendental meditation tradition. You mentioned, Barbara, where from what I haven't studied it too much, but just from the gist that I've gotten over the years, like you're kind of getting into maybe a state, or trying to move into a state. Whereas kind of the Buddhist approach, there's a transformation, a journey, and so forth. But you're actually just trying to open to what's actually here now. It's almost the opposite. And what we would say with as samsara, or the kind of source of suffering, is that we're trying to chase a state. Like we want a certain type of comfort. We don't want a certain pain, or, there's always a kind of a push and pull where we're trying to change the condition, trying to change or maybe grasp and hold on to a certain state and let go, push away in kind of infinite ways. If you want to kind of boil it down in this kind of very simple term.
Is that a little harder then than just transcendental meditation? Because that actually, what the meditation, funny enough, is the one that I learned as well, is transcendental first back in the 80s. But doing meditations now the Buddhist way, where you're trying to be aware of things, it seems, I don't know, it seems a little harder. Not harder to meditate, but just harder to I don't know, maybe deal with, I think. Address, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there's a kind of funny saying, like, once you've entered the path, now I'm going to butcher it, actually. I'm going to let that one go. It depends on how we go. I mean, so the path itself is very simple. It's just that our own personal complexity makes it hard. Like following the breath and sitting still is not very isn't complex. It's just working with the complexity of ourselves is challenging. So gradual, the Buddhist path in general is considered as a gradual process, long-term process. But little simple things can be quite powerful for us. So this idea of acceptance, some level of with meditation, there's kind of two components with meditation. One is kind of connecting with a sense of intention or motivation, so conscious motivation. So in the Buddhist tradition, oftentimes when you sit down before you start it, you kind of check where you're at, and why am I doing this? Almost like, why am I sitting? And the tradition gives us some tools to kind of have a deeper, or kind of a healthier motivation that can help kind of set us up to start. So like if our motivation can be just like, I feel I'm feeling aggravated and I don't want to feel aggravated anymore. Or I'm feeling overwhelmed, I don't want to feel overwhelmed no more. Or I was inspired by this Buddhist stuff 3 weeks ago, and I should sit down and meditate, or whatever, versus kind of tuning into a sense of self-compassion, some of these kind of virtues or values, kindness, whatever it kind of draws us to, even if it's a value of peace. Like I see the value of having a peaceful mind, and connecting with a healthy sense of intention. And that's like the start of the practice. And usually we kind of like to kind of break it into three, like how we start, the actual practice, and then how we finish. And so then the actual practice will be whatever process techniques we're working with. So if we're just doing basic meditation, of wanting to develop a sense of presence, settling practice, calming our minds, starting to have some clarity. That's where we start to try to bring our mind into the present and work with attitudes of acceptance. And that's helping expand our capacity to be with more of ourselves. And again, that's a gradual kind of process. Um, and one of the beautiful things about me with Buddhist psychology, the nature of the mind itself and awareness is and why we meditate in a certain way, why we just kind of focus on a sensory object, the kind of the breath, the sensations of the breath, and come into the present, is because whatever content comes up, it actually kind of there, it's impermanent. Flows, it moves through, and yeah, over slowly we can develop our ability to be with the content. Yeah. Without actually having to do anything with it. So I think sometimes I know my person, like my ego says, like I need to, maybe a controlling, I got to work, I got to fix this, I got to work this out, I got to handle everything, I got to put everything on my shoulders. Kind of the wisdom process that's happening with meditation is that we don't have to hold. There can be, we can kind of release our grip. There's a, kind of a natural balance and natural insight and natural clarity and natural kind of wholeness, natural kind of organization that is the mind's nature, that will actually can start to kind of come out once we start to learn how to kind of hold. Yeah, and then so we're kind of going through it, the middle part of the practice, and at the end of the practice, there's it's another kind of reaffirming that motivation that we started with in the beginning, with we call it dedication practice, where we kind of dedicate. It's like whatever positive seeds, whatever positive energy I've created, whatever positivity I've kind of has occurred with my practice, even if it's just the fact that I sat down and gave it a shot, even if the whole time it was just completely just all over tornado. If I just had one moment of connection, may that kind of bring goodness. May that lead me on my path. May that have ripple effects in the world. May that be some sort of drop to goodness. Yeah. So for me, in a way, it's kind of helping us to kind of take some time and get below the superficial kind of experience. Be able to take some time for ourselves to connect with what's important. So there's a kind of a heart value process at the beginning of setting your motivation. And really that's, again, kind of just finding out what's truly meaningful, like at our core. So love, compassion, peace, well-being, wholeness, whatever kind of calls us. That there's kind of that core yearning. Yeah, and then starting creating a conversation with ourselves and our content without like waking up and being able to accept whatever is happening. And one analogy I like is like when you first start sitting again, or when you sit, it's like sitting down with meeting an old friend we haven't seen in years. So a lot of similar principles. So like you want to find a nice, comfortable place to sit, quiet, seat that's comfortable, place that's conducive to meditation. So it'd be like if you were going to see your old friend, maybe you find a nice cafe you guys can meet at. And then you sit down, you haven't seen each other forever, haven't listened to each other forever, and you're like, hey, how you been? And it's like your friend hasn't talked to another human being in 20 years and just won't stop talking. It's like you're like, oh, how's it? It's great to see you. And then your friend just like unloads like their whole life story and it's all over the place. And from your side as a friend, and this is kind of a nice part of the analogy with meditation, is like you're kind of picking up like, oh, wow, like this, she really needed to talk. And like, oh, wow, that really, like, okay. And so there's a part of you that's aware that they're kind of just like kind of releasing. And another part of you knows in that way, like you want to stay present to your friend. And since you care about them, you're also wanting, it's kind of a caring, like, oh, wow, okay, oh, wow, okay. And then the analogy is eventually your friend, once the friend gets it out, then they're like, oh, wow, okay, I'm sorry, I was talking, I was rambling for her, once they realize like half hour later, like, oh, wow, I'm sorry for that. And then you can have like a deep, real conversation. And that's kind of how the process happens with meditation, especially in the early stages. That it's when we're actually sitting to be with ourselves in this way, without movement, there's just a lot of noise and a lot of kind of but eventually that settles down, and then there starts to be kind of a different shift in the process, and then that starts to unfold into.
One of the things that I noticed when I was meditating before was that it helped with my anxiety. It helped my pulse slow down. My breathing was more relaxed. And I thought, this is great. This is what meditation is about. But I would say over the last couple of months, I've been, it feels like I've kind of like worked through that anxiety layer. And, it's a bit darker in there now. It's like an abyss of despair and fear and need that I think I was really distracted from. So, shopping and eating and socializing and whatever, when you take all of that away and you're just with yourself, it can be, when you're talking about meeting your friend, it's like my friend's very, is in pretty bad shape, and having to be able to sit with that and still feel okay is been challenging. But I feel like that's the mindfulness part of it, that it's that kind of like the kind of like, rather than zooming in on one physiological response, like a pulse rate, it's kind of like zooming in and out at the same time and seeing, where's this anxiety coming from and who I am as a social being, that like I've been conditioned through my whole life to think that this has value and that has value, and without that, what does have value to me? Like that's where I'm at right now in my meditation, and it's not always pleasant, but I feel like it's definitely survivable. So that's encouraging.
Thanks for sharing that, Barbara. Yeah. Yeah, if it's like you said, what if our friends are sad or despair, or if it's workable, I think it's helpful to note our limits. So, and that could be how much time you spend with it, with the content, if there is a kind of a heavy emotion. Mindfulness, is that kind of like that, the zooming in and also zooming out. So there's a bit of space and disidentification with it. So sometimes it is helpful to like say, oh, here's my friend despair, or here's my friend's sadness, or here's my friend anxiety. so there isn't the I think the identification, when we're identified with it, we lose perspective. There's like it's just kind of running the show. It's like there's no perspective, or there's no conversation or process happening.
Yeah, I think the challenge has been to observe it, but not necessarily like claim it, not latch onto it. And so just kind of feel like it's there, but the rest of me is kind of like it just filters through, and it's okay. I mean, I have, it's not all bad, but there are some moments when I'm getting really deep in there that I'm thinking like, wow, how long has this been here with me? Like, how many ways have I distracted myself from this? Like, just so yeah, it's challenging, and it feels like, sometimes meditation feels like it's hard work, but I always feel better after. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, if we can be with it and feel it, and not judge it, not push away, and also maybe not get consumed too much. Yeah, then there's some nature of emotion, it just kind of moves through. So if we're not suppressing it, not distracting from it, it can kind of move through if it's not too strong. If we're able to work with it, feel it, and not judge it. Yeah. And then, and sometimes, one of the helpful aspects of mindfulness is that it's not conceptual. So it helps, there's kind of a felt energy of the emotion. And usually what happens is when the story takes over, then we actually don't really feel it. We don't really feel it anymore. Like one Tibetan teacher said, we don't really feel emotions for very long. Usually we just eventually we split and move into the head, just the head, and a kind of storyline about it. And that doesn't actually kind of like actually have it move through. It doesn't get its time to kind of almost like complete itself. Because we're not really relating with it. So if we're able to feel it and judge it and not judge it, and feel it in a sense of not the story, but just the kind of felt energy of it, that's not too strong. Be very powerful. And again, there's a natural healing that will occur it's almost like if we get out of the way, if we're able to just let it and get out of the way without, and that's kind of a natural healing process will happen. But again, in terms of becoming the one thing with this idea of becoming our own therapists, sometimes actually can be helpful to meet with another trained person to work with some of our stuff, to have that kind of extra support there as another human being to process, in addition to our meditation practice. I do find the two complement each other quite nicely at times, different times in our life. So it's kind of good to know. And sometimes also, so there is this kind of allowing and kind of letting and releasing and kind of being with kind of aspect of meditation. And there's also kind of a counterbalancing approach. So every kind of difficult emotion kind of has a positive counterforce. So like with anger, love, maybe some despair, maybe gratitude. If we're feeling disconnected, compassion, some compassion meditations. Yeah, and so the Sanskrit word for meditation is bhavana, and the word actually means to cultivate. And the Tibetan word for meditation is gom, and the Tibetan word for literally means to become familiar with, familiarize. Meditation is interesting. We've kind of had this translation of meditation, but bhavana actually just means to cultivate. So it'd be like, oh, I'm going to go do my cultivation practice right now. It's kind of interesting, different feel. And the Tibetan word to familiarize, it's kind of pointed to, yeah, it's like customizing, getting accustomed to certain mind states. So I'm meditating on love. I'm familiarizing myself with the feeling and the emotion of love. Or if I'm practicing mindfulness, I'm familiarizing myself with the function of mindfulness, that mental aspect of mindfulness. Or compassion. In our culture, we don't really have that kind of straightforward, like, you know, like love is good, compassion is nice, you know, we all should be good people or whatever. But in these kind of contemplative traditions, it's like, no, yeah, we kind of need to like set aside time to cultivate it. So spending time, 5-10 minutes a day, consciously bringing the emotion of love into our minds and hearts and bodies. Like it's kind of hard which way to use it. Yeah, it's a felt experience. And being with that, we start to become familiar, used to it. And we start to have the ability to generate it. And there's simple practices. There's lots of loving kindness meditations out there. Or, you know, love in the Buddhist traditions defined very straightforwardly. It's just wishing happiness. So desiring happiness. So I'm sending love towards someone else. I'm desiring I'm minding and desiring and wanting in that moment their happiness. I'm feeling that kind of heartfelt wish for them to be well, to have fulfilled, to have what they want. And the same for ourselves. It's we direct that loving kindness meditation to ourselves. It's the same. You know, may I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I feel whole, that I have everything I need. And so we kind of slowly, mindfully cultivate those kind of intentions, those wishes, and it starts to generate that feeling of love, loving kindness, kind of kind, loving friendliness. Yeah. And so that's important to spend those time because it has ripple effects. So if we do spend 5-10 minutes a day doing that, it does build and starts to affect. And there's been studies of like how it affects our physiology or nervous system. In these short bursts. It can start to shift our kind of thought patterns, you know, start to shift our sense of self-image, start to kind of shift our kind of experience of life.
Is that if you're only aware that you're practicing or doing something loving? I mean, I guess accepting that you're doing something loving. Because I mean, I know people that, you know, throughout my life that, you know, they are loving, but they don't feel like they are, and that kind of, you know, defeats the whole practice, I guess.
That's interesting. Yeah, so love is a feeling. And it could, yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, sometimes if we're I know it's common in our culture. It's strange to the Tibetans. They don't, this kind of low self-esteem concept, they actually don't have a word for it in their language. And the Dalai Lama, it's a famous story of the Dalai Lama being a Western psychologist, and he thought there was a translation problem, but because he didn't understand what they were talking about, because they just brought up in a different kind of framework. But yeah, for some, it's easier to kind of give love than it is receive love, and that could be kind of cutting off the feeling of it. So some people are very very giving people, but if it's coming from a place that I need to give because otherwise I'm a bad person, or I need to be giving because I'm whatever, you know, self-centered. Somehow that kind of strangles off the nourishment of the emotion. You know, we might be giving in a way like, you know, we learn some early on in life that I'm not good enough unless I'm doing everything for everybody, saving everybody, or pleasing everybody, or, you know, laundry, you know. So I have to do these things. I have to be kind. I have to be pleasant. I have to be acceptable. I have to be generous. I have to be this. And that motivation actually may be a kind of a self-aggression instead of a kind of a loving place. And it might be a mix. You know, it's probably a mixture. I mean, nothing pure. And, it could be some affection, and some of it is coming from a genuine place. But if there is this kind of self-aggression, it cuts off the nourishment of the love. And so, like in our Buddhist in our culture, yeah, there's loving kindness practice to themselves actually can be quite difficult. Like they can wish other people happy. I mean, want everybody to have, you know, everybody else to have a good time. And it's like, okay, well, try that on yourself. And like, how dare you ask us to do such things? Whatever, you know, there can be this kind of strong kind of.
When you say self-aggression, what's that?
It tends to be some sort of some inner story that we've picked up along the course of our lives. That's I have to be a certain way to be good. And, you know, my sense of worth is tied to whatever, my success, my career, my being a good parent, being whatever, you know. And so there's a bit of a should, or I have to be this way, or else, you know, the truth comes, you know, the true fact that I'm a terrible, rotten person or whatever, you know, comes out. And those can be those really sneaky drives that we may not know, you know, that we might be blind to, because on outwardly it seems we're doing our best to do it, you know. Maybe we're succeeding at it, maybe we are successful, maybe we are good parents and good this and that. So we are fulfilling the needs of that drive, but the drive itself is coming from a place of like a negative self-view or some sort of negative story.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it almost seems like it comes from roots from a previous religion or
Yeah.
upbringing, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say that Protestant work ethic is common.
I was going to say Catholic, but okay.
Or Catholic, yeah. That's my thing too. Yeah, the guilt, not all Catholic tradition, but the one I've raised definitely had a pretty strong guilt complex. Kids can get in deep. And I read something. I used to be a caregiver in college, and I read something that kind of spoke to that. Like I was a bit of a giver, carrying external, but there was this kind of inner narrative that it was coming from a place that wasn't like equal. So yeah, like a self-aggression, some sort of negative self-story. So yeah, in terms of connecting with motivation, that's one of the beauties of like these heart values, these kind of core values of compassion, love, because we can start to trust that, like, no, I genuinely do care about peace, or I genuinely do care about equality, or genuinely do care about loving kindness, compassion. And we don't need external validation for that. Like if we know, like, that is something that we do genuinely value, and acknowledging that in ourselves, very powerful. Because a lot of our suffering comes from an estrangement of that kind of heart value, our heart values, what's really important to us, that comes up. That's why, like in the Buddhist tradition, this the contemplation of impermanence, the Buddha said it's the most powerful thing to kind of drive us to bring sanity to ourselves instantly. Because something about, if you know you're going to die tomorrow, like it just, all the superficial stuff gets, it's like, what would you do? Like it's basically like, what's really important to us? What really matters? And yeah, even if we're in a tough place, that coming back to really like asking ourselves what actually really matters to us, even for a few minutes a day, very powerful. And it actually, Thupten Jinpa has this beautiful book called Fearless Heart. It's on kind of secularized compassion training. He was the English translator for the Dalai Lama he still is, for decades. Fearless Heart. Right, that getting in touch with these heart values actually strengthens and is very supportive for our mindfulness practice. So the more we're more intentional, the genuine, like getting that genuine attention, it starts to kind of cut some of our superficial kind of compulsion and distraction, which then makes meditation easier to do. So, if we really, people will say when they're really aware of, like if a friend, a close person is going to die soon, the sense of your presence is just so strong. Like, you're just there with them. All the other stuff, like grocery lists and my stresses about this and that, they kind of fall away, and you're just really wanting to be with them. And that's actually the natural quality of mind from the Buddhist point of view. That's our Buddha nature. Like when we break the superficial distractions, there's this loving, powerful, present, heartfelt awareness that is actually who we are. It is our nature. Yeah.
You mentioned self-aggression being culturally determined, and so it's stronger in the West in general. I think you meant that, for instance, the Tibetans don't have a word for it. But so in the West, it is stronger. Perhaps in the United States, it's stronger than other European countries at this point in our history. But what cultural function does it serve, since it's culturally determined? Why? What cultural function does it serve, do you think?
Anybody, feel free to, anybody has a
I don't know that it serves anything. My only thought on it from what I've gathered in the past is that it does serve a purpose for kind of regulating society to be a certain way and act in a certain way.
Mhm.
So it doesn't, everything just, doesn't go haywire and go crazy.
But it's going crazy and haywire.
Yeah.
Why would, I don't understand it. I teach in public schools and I've just been slammed by the stuff going on in public schools. I have a real hard time figuring out what's going on in this country. And
Yeah, I mean-
self-aggression, I think that has a lot to do with it, but I don't understand where it's coming, what cultural function. If it serves somebody, who is it? And what is their purpose?
The minute when you said self-aggression, when you first said it, the first thing that popped into my mind was original sin. As the original self-aggression, that you're born a sinful person. And it's working out of that pit that you're born. You're already born. It's hard
In
to
a pit?
explain.
Yeah, and it's the opposite. Yeah, in the Buddhist tradition, it's just the opposite. Like, so in Western psychology, like this, maybe what we're experiencing right now is what the conscious mind, we would say there's the conscious and the unconscious, like the unconscious maybe not aware of in ourselves, suppressing. Buddhist psychology is the opposite. This is the kind of unconscious state. It's more of a superficial mind. And the deeper that we go, the healthier we are. So the more we touch into the authentic mind, basic mind, it's just goodness. It's unconditional goodness. That's not created, timeless, always been there. So some of the metaphors for Buddha nature is riches that were buried under your house that you weren't aware of, or honey inside a swarm of bees, or a beautiful golden Buddha statue wrapped in kind of dirty rags and junk and stuff like that. So it's always kind of been there. And it's a process of trusting, starting to recognize that and trust that more. So it's almost like trusting yourself. So it's, instead of original sin, it's basic goodness, original goodness, or primordial goodness, or whatever you say. Yeah. And our suffering is just that we don't recognize it. We don't recognize it's always been there. Touch. Yeah. And the self-aggression too, it's just, it's good. It's good for the economy. It really drives kind of the machine.
Can you explain that a little more? That's a really good point. Can you explain a little more? It comes from the economy. I agree with that. I don't quite know. I just need a little more focus on that point. How does it make the economy stronger? I guess it does.
Just because if you're
Individuality.
dissatisfied, you need more. Yeah, I mean, if you're dissatisfied, you need more stuff. The dissatisfaction often comes from a cognitive, narrative that something's not good enough right now. You're not good enough. I haven't studied the history. The Protestant work ethics is kind of a buzzword. I haven't really studied the history too much behind it, but sense of your salvation is through deeds and effort. That's kind of what I get from it. And then the Catholic thing with the guilt and the separation of body and spirits. There's all kinds of stuff going on. Yeah. And dependency on the church. Again, you can see the historians have pointed certain cultural points where certain things were stripped out, certain things were added here. And, meditation actually used to be part of the Catholic Mass until the 1600s. And they changed the liturgy and some of the phraseology to take out meditation, because at that time they really didn't want people to cultivate any sort of inner experience. It was kind of the devil or whatever. It's just kind of the cult at that time. They were paranoid of it, and so that the meditation tradition, the Catholic lineage, kind of died 400 or 500 years ago. Now it's just kind of a cultural phenomena that kind of whatever people were freaking out about at that time, they kind of pushed it in a certain direction. The split of science, which led into kind of a materialist view that just kind of also kind of fuels this kind of materialistic nihilism. It's kind of rampant. Heard interesting, my professor, won't go into this because it was like a long thing, he had an interesting PowerPoint on. He was saying in 1492, there was two important things that happened. So there was the Columbus kind of thing, exploration that impacted the Western world, but also the Columbus couldn't find boats when he was supposed to set sail. There were no ships because the day before, the king, the famous king and queen of they ordered all the Muslims and the Jews out of the country, and they were the ship makers. And it's an interesting theory, but it led into what was called the First Nation state. And his idea before that, like these empires were very diverse, kind of organic entities that spread and had lots of different views and things like that. And this kind of shift in Spain with the king and queen turned into the First Nation and kind of homogeny. He said that impacted science and led into this kind of independent drive that we have in our culture now. Also, I've heard like Darwinism was kind of misinterpreted too, like the nature of people we're competitive by nature. That's how we survive, but actually that's not what Darwin was saying. And our survival of our species was we're a community-based species. We have to work together actually to survive. And our evolution of our affect and interconnection was key to our survival. And we're actually, and study after study shows we're hardwired for compassion. Like compassion is our natural default state. Like this.
Yep.
Kid,
That's a recent
yeah.
change. That's a recent change that happened in evolutionary theory in the past 20 or 30 years, is that the cooperation within the species, altruistic evolution has taken over the survival of the fittest mentality, and has changed into the real driving force in evolution is altruistic purposes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's scientifically proven. A lot of it just seems obvious. Like a study shows that if you're kind to somebody, they feel better. But yeah. There's a study in that Fearless Heart book I mentioned that kids that naturally are more inclined to help if they're not incentivized at an early age. Like they did a study, like kids were incentivized to help with the laundry, and they were less likely to help when they were just doing it out of the goodness of their heart. Interesting stuff like that. Yeah, and in Buddhist, like, so reestablishing that interconnection and bringing, that's one of the things that we're waking up to, is that we are interdependent, interconnected being. And in the Buddhist kind of journey, it's those two things. It's this kind of wisdom aspect of being able to bring awareness to things with a sense of mindfulness, kind of spaciousness of mind, not get sucked into it, not react to it. And that develops a sense of equanimity, which will eventually lead into very, very deep levels of peace and kind of this kind of eventually enlightenment. But on the other side of that is this kind of recognition and cultivation of our interconnection, sense of compassion and love. That is our nature. Everything, like the fact that I can speak, like these words, I did, these words came from somebody else taught me this, these clothes came from somebody, everything is like, we're all kind of in this interconnected web. And cultivating that in our hearts also heals this kind of sense of estrangement, which leads to a lot of the symptoms that we have of superficial distractions and anxiety, for example, yeah. Yeah. So they call it the two wings. So there's this kind of interconnected kind of relational wing that's cultivating love, compassion, purpose, and then the kind of what they call the wisdom wing or the emptiness wing, or just the wisdom of letting go, being able just to kind of let go and just be. And there's incredible amount of complexity. I mean, I'm just saying that very simple. There's an amazing amount of complexity and detail about how to really let go in deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper ways too. It's incredible place of mind. So, any burning comments or questions before we finish? So maybe we can do a little practice of dedication, just part of this tradition. And just take a moment to reflect any insights, any light bulbs that went off, anything that's any sort of positive impact that we kind of felt in our thinking and discussing together this past hour. Any positive seeds or energy that we may have cultivated together. We can dedicate that they may bring benefit and ripen in the best way possible. It's leading to the awakening of our full potential, our true nature. And we could be of benefit and lasting value to other beings. To enable them to also awaken to their full potential. And any personal dedication that feels great. Thank you. And Barbara, I was going to mention there's also a great book called Buddhist Psychology.
Oh, okay. Do
related
you know
to
who the
this.
author is?
Yeah, his name is Tashi Searing. It's Tashi. This is his first name, Tashi, and Searing, Tsering.
Okay, great.
Yeah, kind of gives the Buddhist psychological model of mind and working with emotions. It's nice. It's a really nice book. It's about 150 pages, not too.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for the recommendation. I have to take off, so thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time, and everybody, see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody here.
Same time for the next 3 Sundays.
Thanks.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, everybody, for showing up.